Welcome back to the One Room at a Time podcast. I'm your host, Atticus LeBlanc, CEO of PadSplit, and we are back for part 2 of our conversation with Pamela Hughes Patenaude, housing policy expert, former Deputy Secretary of HUD, and current PadSplit advisory board member. Pam, thanks again for being here, and let's jump right back in.
Great. Thanks, Atticus.
You've worked at every level of the housing ecosystem, from state housing finance agencies to the White House to major nonprofits. And when you look back, what are some of the proudest moments or programs that you feel truly move the needle for families and communities?
Well, there's one area we haven't talked about. I actually served on the planning board and chair of the Housing Commission in Bedford, New Hampshire. And back when my youngest child was born in 92, accessory dwelling units made it on the ballot. And I worked on that 33 years ago with the Housing Commission and in the planning board, actually, both played a role in it. And I thought, it's never going to pass. This is, it was a community with 1.5, minimum acres, these huge houses with huge footprints, very much a New England town, stuck doing things the old way, and housing was becoming more and more expensive. So having been involved in that so many years ago, before anybody even knew what it was, even I had to ask, what is an accessory dwelling unit? And the fact that it passed that long ago and it has had several revisions over the years, really proud that I was involved in that. Continue to see that as a solution to our affordability crisis. Another area that I have developed an expertise in is in disaster recovery and the Community Development Block Grant Program. It's not a permanently authorized federal program, but there's been over $100 billion appropriated for this program, mostly since Hurricane Katrina, but it dates back to 9/11. It actually dates back to the mid-1990s. I have seen that program work really effectively over the last, Hurricane Katrina was 20 years ago. So over the last 20 years, have seen people be able to return to their homes because CDBG-DR funding provided the necessary funding to repair their homes. I have seen people move into brand new homes because their homes were destroyed, perhaps in a floodplain, not safe to return home. So I've seen the program work really well and hope that Congress will see fit to permanently authorize that program.
Well, as a native New Orleanian, thank you for your efforts there. I'm actually headed back down over the holidays, and it's been, of course, a lot of heartache, but I think a remarkable recovery overall there. So appreciate all your efforts. And on the ADU stuff, I mean, I had no idea, Pam. That's you really are an OG. We have so many jurisdictions here locally, even in my current hometown of Atlanta, that still have not managed to adopt sensible ADU regulations, which just seems like such a no-brainer.
And I'm happy to say the state has also adopted it. So it's statewide in New Hampshire. And just recently, I had the pleasure of having a conversation about affordable housing, particularly the affordable housing crisis in New Hampshire with Governor Ayotte. And I thanked her for her efforts. She's just finishing up her first year as governor, although she had served in the United States Senate. So we had many conversations when she was a senator about affordable housing. And New Hampshire is, a small population, but certainly is suffering. They're losing their college grads to other states because it's too expensive to live in New Hampshire.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as we talk about potential solutions, I mean, you've obviously been on our advisory board, Habitat for Humanity, others on the front lines of housing innovation. Just curious to know, what do you see as some of the most promising trends, and then what are the barriers from these trends being adopted or these solutions being adopted?
I talked earlier about how so little that has changed in the 40 years. Let's shift to the construction side of this. Houses are still built pretty much the same way. I grew up with a mom as a home builder. She built luxury housing, but still it's, stick-built homes. And we're still building houses the same way. And there are some people that are working really hard to try to figure out how we can build, more efficiently. We have a extreme shortage of skilled labor, electricians, plumbers, framers, in the trades. So encouraging more men and women to go into the trades and start acknowledging that the trades are a wonderful way to make a living. A plumber makes a really good living, and an electrician makes a really good living, but yet we still push kids to go to four-year colleges rather than to, pursue the trades where they can own their own business, be entrepreneurs. Looking at modular offsite building, is beginning to take shape. We need to find more efficient ways to build. I mean, we're not creating any more land. The land that's here in the world is here. And so much of it built on here in the United States. Lumber, yes, we have seen prices come down, on building materials, thankfully, particularly since, during the COVID, the shortage and
Sure.
the number of people that were spending time renovating their houses. We have to look, how can we build more efficiently? The regulatory barriers are eating up a bigger and bigger part. Remember we used to talk about, 10-15% of building attributed to regulatory barriers. We're 30-35% are contributed. So that, that can't continue. We actually have to reverse that trend.
And it seems like Secretary Turner, current HUD secretary, has made a push around legalizing manufactured housing and streamlining financial products for manufactured housing across the country. Is that still an ongoing effort?
Absolutely. I think, Secretary Turner is very interested in finding, alternative ways. I mean, in New Hampshire, you have a much shorter building season. So you can only pour foundations up until, a certain date. That changes depending on the weather. But you've got, 3 months maybe that you can't pour a foundation. So your building envelope, is narrowed.
Sure.
If you could get a foundation in, before the first frost, and be able to build off site, it's, a lot of the country is under extreme weather conditions in the winter. So more costly to build there. And if we could figure out how to build in a controlled environment where there is constant demand, that's part of the problem. If a manufacturer of housing does not have a constant backlog, if you will, or a
pipeline to sell.
Pipeline, what are their workers going to do?
Sure.
So then the cost would go up. So, I think there's a lot of people working on this. Hugh Frater, the former CEO of Fannie Mae, is working on using new construction types in multifamily, small multifamily buildings, but experimenting that. And we also have to hold up these best practices. I think there are people that believe that manufactured housing, is not, it's built to a HUD code.
Yeah. Talk about innovation. Yesterday, I just happened to tour it was 4 modular buildings, 2 that were designed for PadSplit, and 2 ADUs in the back. So it was modular plus ADU plus PadSplit all in one development. So it's not like, to your point, I mean, it's not like that we can't do this. It's not that anything's necessarily new. I had looked at starting a modular company in Hurricane Katrina, immediately after Hurricane Katrina in my hometown of New Orleans. So this stuff's been around for a long time. It seems like it's just a question of a lot of the barriers in place to both regulatory to get out of the way, but then talk a little bit about financing, Pam. I mean, I don't know if that's something you'd mentioned, Hugh Frater, former CEO of Fannie, but I know in my experience, it's been a huge barrier as we think about just whether it's room rental income that's not necessarily able to go into qualifying for a loan the same way that it would be for multifamily. I know it's a huge barrier for accessory dwelling units as well. And how do you get them financed?
So
But
I think financing is an area I have the great pleasure to serve on the board of Loan Depot. We
hmm,
provide mortgages for first-time home buyers, veterans, repeat buyers, and just looking at what it costs to originate a loan. So we'll just start on that side first. Has increased substantially. I'm going to say that the last administration did not help first-time home buyers because of the regulatory barriers. So I think President Trump has had a great deal of focus on that. I think the CFPB, maybe well intended under Dodd-Frank, became something that was increasing costs that was
sure.
not there was no transparency either. So trying to figure out how to originate a single family or a loan for a condo in a more efficient way. The mortgage companies are using every bit of technology available to try to reduce the number. A mortgage application file can be like 600 pages.
Wow.
It's pretty insane, what's required. So I think we're beginning to see reducing the regulatory barriers, reducing unnecessary compliance, over-regulation, looking at underwriting, alternative forms of housing, with allowing for room rentals,
Hmm.
forward-looking, so that people can obtain financing to be able to buy a home, to be able to create a co-living environment. That's something that people need to be open to innovative ideas.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in my humble opinion, I feel like it would really open the floodgates for folks to be able to do this. And because we've seen the same thing with ADUs as well, which is if there's no financing, then it's really hard. It's hard to make it work. And where we've seen the explosion in California, it's largely because they allowed separate lots to be configured so you could get specific financing for a separate structure on the property, or almost a separate lot. Um, but yeah, I mean, are you optimistic, Pam, on just the innovation within the financial sector as we look at the situation with the GSEs, Fannie, Freddie, and then under HUD, FHA? I mean, is
I,
there
I
is there an
am.
appetite there for innovation?
Yeah, yeah, I'm super excited about our soon-to-be FHA Commissioner, Frank Cassidy. Hopefully, he'll be confirmed by the United States Senate this week. Frank comes from mortgage origination background on the multifamily side, and he's been in the actually before he even graduated, he bought his first home uh, with an FHA loan and created his own co-living environment with
That's right.
his
Yeah, I remember that.
college roommate. So I'm very excited that Frank's going to be there. He'll be the youngest FHA commissioner in the history of FHA, which, as you know, goes back more than 70 years. So,
Hmm.
I think there is excitement about the leadership there and thinking outside of the box.
Well, let's hope so. Double tap on that. Well, Pam, talking about Frank Cassidy, hopefully soon to be FHA commissioner, you have mentored and led countless housing professionals over the course of your career, and just curious to know what advice you would give to the next generation of policymakers, developers, housing advocates who are interested in making a difference in this space.
So I think providing internship opportunities is where it really needs to start. I had two internship opportunities in my life because in my mid 30s, I went back to school to get a master's in community economic development. So I can say that the internship opportunities is what helped shape, my career. So as often as I can, I work with young men and women. When I was in government, I certainly had a huge platform to be able to do that, but encouraging people to go into housing, whether they go, take a job on Capitol Hill, with a member that's working, House Financial Services or Senate banking to learn policy, on the legislative side, pursuing a job, during an administration, because the politicals are actually the ones working on policy with the support, of career staff, but just encouraging people to look at housing, healthcare. It's, you go to school to be a nurse, you go to college, you go into nursing. there's no one program for this. There's a lot of masters in real estate, but in undergrad, it's not really clear cut. If you were interested in housing, what major would you go into? Mine was certainly not leading me into a housing policy space. It was kind of serendipitous how it happened. I was a criminal justice major. My uncle, who inspired me to go to HUD for an internship, I was actually in the IG's office, but it was that first trip to Baltimore looking at public housing that I was like, I really like the programs. I don't really know why I'm following the law enforcement route. And that's when I made the decision to pivot. But I was able to see it firsthand.
Sure. Love it. Well, yeah, thank you for that. And as a note to everyone else out there, try to offer as many internship opportunities as you can.
And there's so many ways to make a living in housing that are meaningful, whether you're a mortgage originator, an underwriter, title insurance, agent working in that field, real estate, is a wonderful way to make a living, working, every day to help first-time home buyers. And then working at the policy level, whether it be a think tank like the Bipartisan Policy Center, the Urban Land Institute, there are a lot of opportunities, but it's not really crystal clear what do you major in if you want to do this? Undergrad.
Well, for me, it was architecture and urban studies, but
that one is there, but that's extremely competitive, and not everybody was cut out to be an architect. You better be pretty good in math to be able to get into that program.
Yeah, well, I knew early on that I definitely did not want to be an architect, but yeah, for me it was just I graduated from college and started taking informational interviews because I knew that I wanted to be doing something in the real estate world. And to your point, I mean, of all the people that I know that are real estate developers, basically all of them started at a completely different point, where some were brokers, some were not connected to real estate at all, and it's but it's not rocket science, as they say. And yeah, I think as we've demonstrated, if we've demonstrated anything as a platform, it's that really anybody can be a part of this solution. And something that I stress with all of our potential hosts and our residents as well, some of whom have gone on to become PadSplit hosts. So
another great place to volunteer. Habitat for Humanity, we have over 1,000 affiliates just in the United States alone, and I've had the great pleasure to serve on the international board of Habitat for Humanity for the past 6 years, and volunteering for Habitat Build it's life-changing, and that often attracts young men and women into the field.
I don't know if we ever talked about this, Pam. I actually rode a bicycle across the country after college for Habitat for Humanity.
Well, that's incredible. That's wonderful. I've done some Carter work builds, but I've never ridden my bike across country. That's fabulous.
Yeah, we even stopped for a build along the way. So but yeah, great program. Well, shifting gears a little bit, Pam. I mean, so kind of going back to some of the policy stuff, I want to make sure I ask you this before we sign off. Just what do you think the perfect collaboration looks like? I mean, you have, of course, I think everybody on the right side of the aisle really pushes federalism, and that they don't want the federal government necessarily getting too heavily involved in dictating policy at the local level. Of course, then again, you see this disconnect between local officials and the unwillingness to honor personal property rights, which are, of course, protected in the Constitution. And so as you think about like federal, state, local policy and the private sector, what do you think that perfect collaboration looks like? How should it work?
So I would love to see the White House convene a summit with the highest ranking officials in the federal government, including DOT, not just HUD, Treasury, FHFA, USDA, VA, and then invite some of the governors to the table, particularly somebody like a Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, who's really interested in moving the needle to address the affordable housing crisis in a state that's, growing rapidly. And then some of the mayors, and not just the big city mayors, not just New York and DC, but mayors like Mayor Ruiz of Manchester, New Hampshire, who part of his platform, was to tackle the homelessness crisis in New Hampshire. Bring in mayors from more rural parts of the country. Bring together a group and help identify so that they can work hand in hand. What is stopping the production of new housing? What's stopping the using the available space, like PadSplit, the co-living, environment? What's preventing us from actually solving this crisis? Because we can solve this crisis. We do have, PadSplit has demonstrated that there is, so much unused square footage in this country that we could be utilizing. That could be, the ladder of opportunity that people, and again, PadSplit members have gone on to become homeowners and successful entrepreneurs. So I think that's what I would like to see, is a convening. Perhaps the Office of Public Liaison could work on this, bringing together a cross sector representing, federal policymakers, state level. And again, we don't want a super zoning czar. We don't want governors overstepping either, but helping to identify and maybe working, hand in hand. But I don't know if the governors are talking to each other about the solutions to the affordability crisis. I don't know if mayors, I know the U.S. Conference of Mayors and League of Cities, but are they really zeroing in on, okay, we all understand and acknowledge the problem. Now let's lay out all the possibilities and let's think outside of the box. Let's stop looking for yesterday's solution, which is,
and just more funding.
Which is not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I don't want my grandchildren strapped with this. We have a debt that is spiraling. And again, the people that end up with a housing voucher, it's like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
That's one lucky family or one lucky senior. But for every one, there's 3 that are not getting it.
Something that I've long suspected, Pam, that I've been hearing more and more is from local elected officials who have generally seen a presentation from some think tank or consultant or regional housing nonprofit, and they understand what the issues are, right? And they understand to some degree, like, what barriers need to be removed, but they just don't have the political capital to overcome some of those not in my backyard constituents who are absolutely still stuck in yesterday's housing paradigm that, oh, well, of course, everyone that has a job can afford a place to live, which just isn't true. And so what I hear from those individuals is like, look, I would prefer if the state threw me in the briar patch, quote unquote, so that they then have plausible deniability with some of those voting constituents because they know the right thing to do or they know what should happen, but they either lack the political consensus or capital or frankly courage to be able to stand up to some of those constituents and just say, look, the facts are not in your favor here and we have this housing and homelessness crisis that needs to be solved. I'm curious to know if you're hearing some of that same chatter. It's something I've thought about for a long time, but I've actually been hearing it vocalized more and more from local officials.
That they don't have the political coverage?
Well, not just that they don't have the political capital. I think they've always acknowledged that and still do. It's more that this willingness to accept state preemption, I think, is the operative word. I haven't heard federal preemption even necessarily mentioned, but it's almost like this opening to, well, if a greater authority forced me to make these good decisions, then we would go ahead and make them. And I don't know if that's something that in your travels across the country, if you've kind of seen similar things or less so.
It's something I'd like to do to explore in 26 is to get out there and talk to more local because that's where the rubber meets the road with the NIMBYs. And, I got to witness that firsthand as a member of my hometown planning board, where meetings would go on past midnight because the NIMBYs would show up en masse to try to prevent any new development from going on. And I don't think that, I think that goes on across the country, night after night, planning board, zoning boards. So, I think that's where the convening, bringing together the different levels of government. I worked with the National Housing Crisis Task Force, and that's just an example of some really smart policy people sitting in a room, but there's oftentimes local, state, and federal, people with experience at every level in a room having that conversation. It needs to happen
Yeah.
and in a more visible way.
But I mean, what do you think the barriers are for some of those local officials? I know you're
Lack of
often
lack of
mentoring.
lack of political courage.
Yeah.
People should not be there if they can't do their jobs. And I mentioned the regulatory barriers, 30 or 35% of the cost of a new unit. Well, let's start right there.
Sure.
Let's that doesn't even take political courage. Looking at the costs that they're contributing to, at the local level. It's like you said, it's working Americans can't afford to live
Yeah.
in a home. Those are the people that are, waiting on you in your local restaurant. Those are the people taking care of you when you're, in the local emergency room. Those are the teachers teaching your children and grandchildren. These are really hardworking people that are being, kept from being able to live close to where they work. I just think we have to affordable housing. It shouldn't even be about affordable housing. It should be about all housing.
Yeah. Well, and just access, right? And if you have a job, you should be able to have a home.
And I think educating, Atticus, you played a really important role. We very seldom talk about access and what it takes. So you're getting out of college with a job, but a huge amount of debt, and then you're trying to get into your first apartment, and you've got to come up with all this money.
Yeah.
On before you can move into this apartment. And I think just articulating what it takes. I don't think people that live comfortably in their home, whether it be an apartment or home ownership, really ever think about the day-to-day, reality of what is preventing,
Yeah, no question.
the kid who played on the basketball team, with their kid. Well, why can't he get an apartment or she get an apartment or?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's almost $5,000 now between average 1-bedroom rent plus deposit plus utility deposits plus furniture.
How many months do you have to work to be able to save $5,000? A lot.
Exactly. Yeah, I know I didn't have that when I first moved to Atlanta 23 years ago. So, well, Pam, I know we're coming up on time here, so I wanna wrap up, give you the opportunity to get back with your family, but let's move into rapid fire Q&A.
Okay.
So yeah, in one sentence, what's one daily habit that keeps you grounded?
Are my grandchildren first and foremost, and then my 3 wonderful daughters, but our grandchildren.
That'll do it. What are you currently reading or watching that's giving you inspiration these days?
So I watch very little TV, and have found some fun mini series to watch. Diplomat being probably the one that I've enjoyed the most lately. Really, the book that I just started reading is one of my fellow board members of the Bipartisan Policy Center, Robbie Bach, wrote this wonderful novel during COVID, and we had it as part of our book club. And he just came out with the sequel. So the first book, The Wilkes Insurrection, and now this brand new book, and it's sitting on my nightstand. And Robbie's going to kill me, but I can't remember the name of it. It will come back to me right after we hang out. Anyways,
We'll
it's a sequel to it. So
okay.
And I spend a lot of time reading about housing policy. Like the Lincoln Institute just came out with this study. So I spend a lot of time doing nerdy stuff, like looking at the National Association of Realtors economic housing forecast or the home builders forecast. I really enjoy reading about housing policy. And as I get older, I'm more and more interested in international policy just because I've had more time to travel.
All good. All good. Well, yeah, we're both nerds in that respect, Pam. So you're in good company. And then you've worked in so many cities and communities. Do you have a favorite housing project or city that stands out?
I have one right now. There's a project under construction called Catch Light in Orlando, right on the campus of, adjacent to the campus of Universal Studios.
Okay.
And I think it's one of the most innovative housing developments. It has it all. It will have a daycare. It will have preschool. It would have healthcare access right on the campus. It's not exclusive to Universal Studios employees because they can't limit it to it. But Universal did donate the land. And just thinking about my grandchildren again and knowing how much they enjoyed the Disney cruise, looking forward to going back to Orlando to see Catch Light. They're vertical now under construction, but I think that's going to be one of the most exciting projects to break ground. And then I have another favorite project in Puerto Rico that I hope will be breaking ground shortly, and that's a senior project, Ponce de Leon, something that has been in the pipeline for a long time. And there's a huge need for senior housing in Puerto Rico.
Awesome. And then if you could wave a magic wand and fix one aspect of U.S. housing policy tomorrow, what would it be?
To fix one issue, I think would have to be regulatory barriers, because money, we don't have enough money to solve it that way. But it's a big one, but I do think it's where we can have the greatest impact.
Yeah. Listen, I don't disagree with you. But it's a big one. Well, hopefully those who are currently in elected office are up for it. But Pam, thank you so much for joining us on the One Room at a Time for this podcast, for this 2-part episode. Your leadership and lifetime of service remind us that housing is more than policy. It's people, collaboration, and community. And your ability to bring both sides of the aisle together is something we need more than ever. For our listeners, you can learn more about Pam's work through Habitat for Humanity International, the Bipartisan Policy Center, and right here at PadSplit. Be sure to subscribe to One Room at a Time podcast wherever you listen or watch. And please leave us a review. Tell us who we should talk to next. Pam, thank you again for your time and for all you do for PadSplit.
Thanks so much, Atticus. Look forward to seeing you soon.